Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is my first Access conference, and it's also my first time in Montreal. So I've really enjoyed both the conference and of what little I've been able to see of Montreal. So thank you very much. My name is Paul Campbell. I'm an assistant professor and the social science and assessment librarian at Kent State University. I just recently moved to Kent State University where back in March, but before that I was a librarian at Ohio University. So today I'm going to be talking about how I have overhauled my library instruction to increase active learning utilizing Google Slides. So my presentation, though, is going not well. That's okay. Okay, so my presentation is going to be broken up into two different parts here. One is how I utilize the ADDIE model for instructional design to overhaul my instructional practice. But then also the second part, I really want to give you some concrete examples of what my digital worksheets that I have developed would actually look like for real classes. So for those of you that don't know, the ADDIE model for instructional design is just a cyclical process for designing instruction. It's analysis, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. The analysis phase is where we look at what we want to do. It's our hopes and our dreams for our instruction. But it was also a part where I had to come to that realization that I was a terrible library instructor and I needed to figure out a way to be better. And my instruction was really heavily focused on the point and click database demonstrations that are just totally not effective. My instruction was completely unconnected to student needs or student information needs. And I found that students, because of that, were extremely unengaged, bored, and I even got to a point where I was bored giving the lecture at the front of the room. And I definitely really wanted to have students have a direct benefit from being in a classroom with me for one class period, typically, and then connected to the framework for information literacy. So the design phase is when we look at what you know about your instruction or know about your learners. As a librarian, I typically have just one shot with those students, and I want to be as impactful as I possibly can within that one session. I have to design an instruction that is. Students come from all sorts of different experiences with the library. Some have extensive library experience, but many students really have no clue. And so I needed to be able to develop an instruction that has many different on-ramps into the learning outcomes that I need. Another thing I had control over is that I just started to make demands of my teaching faculty, and I wanted them to send me the actual assignment that the students would be working on, and I had to learn how to say no to instruction that is just can you do your library thing? I don't really care what you say, I won't be there. The first week of class, so no, I'm not going to do that. So I knew what I wanted to accomplish, but I needed to start experimenting with different instructional technologies because I really wanted students to actually start engaging with the databases based upon their topic. So I created a Word doc with a worksheet in it. In a LibGuide, but that just didn't quite work. I tried to use Google Docs, but that was also problematic because there was a lot of scrolling. But one other goal I really had was that I really did not want to have an additional barrier to use a product, an instructional technology product that requires students to create an account. So I just wanted to be able to present something and then they could start running with it. So ultimately, I decided to use Google Sheets. And then because I knew the assignment, I was able to connect or assign a frame or two based upon the assignment. So I was able to design that worksheet based upon the framework. The implementation phrase, I found some safe faculty that I could implement this with, ones that were more willing to let me try different things out. But also, this is the slide that I give to all of you to not fear failure, your pep talk here. Failure is how we go beyond our normal pedagogical or boundaries. And so that's how, I mean, I learned by falling on my face. So don't be afraid of it. That's how we go forward. The evaluation phase, the last phase here is because the students are working on their individual digital worksheet, I'm able to go around the room and see where they are in the process and give them different bits of help. After the session, I take intentional time to reflect on what worked and what didn't work. And then I also seek feedback from the faculty member that I did the instruction for to see if what we talked about in class actually met what they think that would help their students. And very recently, I have started to implement a 90-second survey at the end of class for students to fill out. But as I said earlier, the ADDIE model is cyclical. So once you go through one process, you take what you learn, you make modifications, and then you start all over again. So this is the framework for information literacy. Now, I know this is going to be a controversial opinion, but it is my opinion that the 6 frames are not in hierarchical order. They are interconnected. But I do believe through experience that research as inquiry and searching as strategic exploration are kind of more foundational. So my 3 examples today are I start with those and then I add in different ones. Because I know the assignment, I'm able to create that digital worksheet for based upon the assignment so that I know that the students would actually get started on their research project. I know you can't quite see this, but this is my Google slide deck that I have. So this is just one package of instruction, and it has links to different library databases and the exercises that we do as a class together. And then can you see? Oh, the mouse isn't there. But the picture with the road on it, that is the tiny URL that I give to students in class, and that actually gives them access to this entire slide deck. And then I start, the second to the last slide is the digital worksheet. We'll see more of it in just a second. So I actually assign one slide to each student. So your slide 1, your slide 2, your slide 3. And if you want, this is the tiny URL that you can use to see that particular slide deck. In the slide deck, I do have little annotations about what each slide's purpose is and what I do as within the class. The slide deck is available through OSF, both slide decks, today's presentation as well as this one. So the first example I have today is it's a single 80-minute session. It's mostly juniors and seniors, about 10 to 15 students in LGBT research methods course. And of course, I assigned the research as inquiry and research, searching as strategic exploration frames. So this is the actual slide that the digital worksheet that I create. So each student would have one of these that they would be typing in their topic at the very top, and then they would identify in the gray box the main concepts of their question or their topic, and then they would start developing in the yellow box different key terms or related, developing the keyword bank. Based upon the class, I give some subject-specific databases that I think are most relevant to this particular class, but then I also specifically have students to think critically about what other disciplines would have something to say about your topic. And then I want them to explore library databases that would have something that would be related. Some of the themes that I've been listening to today and yesterday is I am convinced now more than ever that students, they don't know, they cannot differentiate the difference between just the general library website and library databases. So this is a way for me to try to get them to see that there's a difference between ProQuest and EBSCO and JSTOR. Just citing library website is not an accurate way of doing it. And then the green box, I want them to find articles that are related to their topic. And I make it very clear that they're not going to be married to these articles. These are just a starting point, and they can take them home and evaluate them much deeper later on. So here, the first two boxes are, I have assigned researcher's inquiry, and then the salmon and the mint box are what I think is searching as strategic exploration. The next example is I actually had two 80-minute sessions with this class. It was a history senior seminar. So the students in this class have to create a 25-page paper in order to graduate on some sort of a historical topic. There's 20 students in the class. They are all seniors. And in this class, I started with the same two frames, but then I added in the frames scholarship as conversation. And here, I really wanted students to begin to realize that they are no longer solely consumers of information, but they are in fact going to be producers of information. And they do that because they are going to be participating in the scholarly conversation within their discipline or their topic. And what I do here is the darker blue box, I have them go to the reference section of their paper that they found and find another source that would be relevant to their topic, and I have them put it in. And then the lighter blue box, I have them go to Google Scholar and find the article that they have found and see where and look at the cited by to see where the conversation has gone forward. So it's kind of like looking at scholarship in a temporal fashion where you have your one article and you're looking at the references and looking into the past, and then you're looking also where the conversation has gone in the future. This last example here is actually a class that I had at my last institution. It was wonderful. I had 3 whole hours with them. It was magical. It was the honors seminar course. So this was taken right before they wrote their senior thesis, their honors thesis. So this was a very small class. So it was a lot of fun. Mostly juniors and sophomores, actually. And so this is the worksheet that we worked on over the course of 3 hours. And this one I added the idea of authority as constructed and contextual. Here we had more of a conversation about where the articles or the sources that they found, how do they have authority? And so realizing that an article published by a political scientist has authority because they are a political scientist that went through the peer review process, yada, 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 but has authority. But then also a first-person account about some event or an oral history about somebody's experience also has authority. But so both items have authority, but for very, very different reasons. I've had some limitations with this. One is the obvious that it is highly dependent on whether or not students have a device in my classroom. And so to try to accommodate for that, I will make sure that the faculty member knows that I want the students to bring their laptop if they have them. And I will find a room that has desktop machines in it, or I will find our loaner laptops that I can just have students use. So I'll go get a couple of those from the front desk in order to make sure that students can all access it. This is kind of embarrassing, but you have to make sure that the tiny URL you give them is actually active. It makes it difficult if it's not. It is unrealistic to cover all 6 frames, so you have to be very strategic. 80 minutes or even 3 hours seems like a long time, but in order for to teach students how to teach students about the frames, you can't do all 6. So this last one, the Google Slides are a little too customizable for me. So Google, if you're listening, I would love to talk to you about this. Like, I wish that I could make each of the different boxes like immovable, because sometimes students, they can be very finicky about where to click, and it moves them, and it's kind of difficult. And some benefits, a lot of benefits for this is that sometimes students walk into my classroom and I say that we're going to actually be doing research on your topic today, and they start to freak out because they're like, I don't have a topic. But that's actually really a kind of a good thing, because by engaging with the literature, even if the student has just a broad idea of what they want to do their research on, engaging with the literature helps them narrow down their topic. My goal for each of my sessions is that students are able to find 2 to 3 articles that are highly relevant to their topic. And then I'm able to send out the link to the faculty members so that they can share it in their Canvas course, so that students can come back to the worksheet that they created. I have very preliminary results from the 90-second survey, and students have reported that they really appreciate learning more about that. Developing key terms is really important to the research process, as well as learning that there's more to the library, generic library website than, and there are relevant databases to their particular topic. So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Paul. And yes, we'll get started with questions. Oh, thank you so much. I'm also an instructional librarian, and I feel like we are not the majority at this conference, and I really appreciate the content. I have 2 questions. You can decide. Perfect. Well, this is interesting. This question is fairly straightforward. I'm wondering if you have found a like maximum number of students where this becomes too unruly. Like, how many students have you done this with where you're like, oh, maybe that's the highest like end of the, of the attendance?
I would say probably 23 to 25 is starting to push it. But I'm actually really glad you asked that question, because there are different ways that I have been able to accommodate for that. So one thing, I think that if I was going to, if I had a class larger than that, I might want to break it up into small groups and then give students fake research topics. So it's not, then it kind of takes away from their specific topic, but at least they're learning the mechanism and the process of doing research and engaging with the library databases. So that's one way of going around it, but I actually don't know if I had a class. I've never had a class of like 30 or above. That sounds really arrogant and privileged. I'm sorry, but I don't know how I would overcome that if I had to, other than breaking it up into groups.
I'm also wondering if, like I noticed on your worksheet, you give the students sort of the freedom to explore their own research topics. In my experience with first and second year sort of like, entry level students in their undergrad, a big part of the struggle is determining what their research question is. Have you found that that takes up more class time than it's worth? Have you considered giving them sort of prefab topics? Is that a balance you've had to strike at all?
Yeah, there was a class I really enjoyed teaching. It was a freshman welcome to college class. And it was, but it's major specific. So at my last institution, it was psychology. Exploring the psychology major was the actual class, and the students had to just find an article and then write a review of it. And for that class, I gave them some canned topics, and then I had them working in groups because they are freshmen, and I wanted them to kind of learn from each other. That way, we're not wasting time trying to figure out a topic. So here's your topic. If you had to write a paper on it or find an article on it, this is how we do it. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, sorry, this is another easy one and I might have missed it, but when the students are working in the sheet, are they kind of all collaboratively working on the same sheet, or do they each have an individual one that they get to fill in?
The goal is that each student has their own individual one, but sometimes it makes more sense, depending on the class, to have like a group that they can work on together. But especially for the higher level classes, junior and senior, I really want to have them have their own individual sheet, because the topics, even within a class, are so all over the place.
Absolutely. And if I may, a second part, kind of to follow up from that, I think one of the things that I'm also an instructional librarian, and one of the things I struggle with is like evaluation. And like, obviously you do it in the class, you ask for feedback in surveys, but one of the things we don't often have access to is kind of like material written stuff that we can then kind of look back at and reflect like, oh, was I conveying my point and was I successful? So are you looking back at those sheets as a kind of form of self-evaluation? Or because I think the other thing that I think about is like students are kind of being evaluated all the time, and giving them space to have like an evaluation free zone where they can kind of explore. Anyways, so I was just wondering how you thought about that balance.
I would love to be able to have like this worksheet to be an actual assignment within that course. But that's a future Paul problem, a hurdle, because I think that would be really interesting to look at whether or not if these worksheets truly are as effective as I think they are. But right now, all I have is how far students can get through the different elements of the worksheet. I had this amazing faculty member in political science at my last institution. It was like a wonderful relationship, and then she retired. But she even let me in to her class where I would grade the bibliographies of her student papers, so that I was able to really see that students they just really didn't get at least at the time, the students didn't really understand tertiary sources like Wikipedia. And so I was able to modify my instruction going forward to really explain what tertiary sources are and how they are used in the research process.